Hi, I'm Julia Sutherland, a Research Fellow at the University of St Andrews, and it is a pleasure to talk to you about my PhD research, which investigated predator-prey interactions of killer whales and seals in inshore Shetland. Starting off with a little bit of background, this research takes place in the context of the harbour seal decline. For those of you not aware, harbour seals have undergone regional declines around the north and east coast of Scotland, whereas populations on the west coast are typically stable or increasing. A huge body of research conducted at the Sea Mammal Research Unit has investigated potential drivers of these declines, including changes in prey availability, biotoxins in prey, interactions with grey seals, and killer whale predation. Unsurprisingly, I will be focusing on killer whale predation, and as you can see from the map on the left, there is a strong spatial overlap in killer whale sightings in areas where harbour seals are declining or depleted. Previous research investigating the foraging ecology and top-down impact of killer whales was conducted in 2009 and 2011. However, since then, there has been a paucity of research, which is where my PhD came in. The study area for this research is Shetland, the northernmost islands in Scotland. Research was predominantly land-based, and thus data collection was at a highly coastal scale. Sightings were typically made within 2.5 kilometres of the coastline and predation events within 1 kilometre. The population, as it were, of inshore foraging killer whales comprises of semi-resident members of the Northern Isles community, Scotland-Iceland migrants, and roving males. This equates to around 50 individuals seen regularly in inshore waters in our sample year of 2021. The knowledge gaps I will be addressing as part of this presentation, therefore, include killer whale prey composition, their energetic requirements, and their spatial temporal presence. The first knowledge gap to address is prey composition, and to do this, predation attempts were collated between 2016 and 2023 from fieldwork, citizen science, and drone monitoring imagery. As you can see in some images, such as the top left, it was clear to identify the targeted species. However, in the bottom left, that could either be a harbour or a grey seal, and in the bottom right, that could be any form of mammalian blubber. To subjectively identify prey species without bias, I established an expert solicitation panel and asked them for their subjective probability of prey identification. This was then put into a multinomial model to assign the most likely prey species with associated confidence to each predation attempt. Overall, 127 predation attempts were analysed, of which 51 were identified as a seal, either harbour or a grey, 25 as harbour seal, 20 as grey seal, 7 as harbour porpoise, 6 as seabirds, and 16 as unknown mammals. As I said, these were predation attempts, so the next step was to explore factors contributing to the probability of capture and consumption versus escape. Of the variables included, species was an important predictor, and most notably here, I'd like to point out that harbour seals, which was the red line, had almost twice as high a probability of being captured and consumed given an encounter with a killer whale in comparison to grey seals, which is the blue line. Predation events occurring further from the shoreline also had higher probability of success in comparison to those closer to shore. I would like to flag a couple of considerations, including uncertainty in prey ID. So the grey line here, which had the highest probability of consumption, is seal and is made up of both harbour and greys. There is also some seasonal bias towards the summer months in terms of data collection, and some spatial limitations given the highly coastal nature of the data set. Once prey species composition was estimated, the calorific content of different seal species and age classes was calculated. Predator energetic requirements were estimated based on age and sex class, with size-specific field metabolic rates calculated for adults and juveniles and males and females. Finally, the number of killer whales days when the animals were present in 2021 was estimated based on data from the Shetland Biological Record Centre. And importantly here, pod-specific days includes the demography and associated energetic requirements of the pods known to be present. Once these knowledge gaps were addressed, upper and lower estimates for each parameter were put into a Monte Carlo uncertainty analysis. 95th percentiles of 10,000 simulations are reported here, with adult males requiring around 120,000 calories per day, females 90,000 calories, and juveniles 61,000 calories. For the year 2021, based on the prey composition shown here, this roughly equates to 91 harbour seals taken, 193 juveniles and 112 pups, and 33 grey seal adults taken and 73 grey seal juveniles. Importantly here, I should note that grey seal pups are not included, and this is not to say that they're not taken, just that they were not included in our sample. Consumption estimates derived from the uncertainty analysis were input into a Leslie matrix model, with a harvest type parameter added for predation estimates to simulate plausible population trajectories for harbour seals within the seal monitoring area of Shetland over a 35-year period. However, given some uncertainty in the input parameters, 3 scenarios were explored. The first was the consequences of the estimated rates, where takes and proportions were those estimated in the present study. The second was consequences of diet composition, where a change in age class or species composition was explored. And the third was consequences of adjusted vital rates. So those vital rates taken for harbour seals from a declining or depleted population versus a stable or an increasing population. Consequences of the estimated rates as presented here resulted in the harbour seal population being significantly depleted after 15 years. Given a change in consequences of diet composition, so a change in the age class and species of predation estimates, the harbour seal population was significantly depleted after 25 years. However, given consequences of adjusted vital rates, looking at a change in population parameters, the model showed divergent trajectories over a 35-year period, with some simulations resulting in decline, some in stable, and some in increase for the harbour seals in the Shetland seal management area. To conclude, killer whale predation may have the potential to hinder harbour seal population recovery and result in declines. However, there are still uncertainties in prey composition and predator energetic requirements. It is also plausible for killer whales to switch to a more abundant prey resource as another diminishes, and there is still uncertainty in seal baseline vital rates, that is, whether or not killer whale predation is already incorporated in vital rates for declining and depleted harbour seal populations. Future research looks to investigate both consumptive and non-consumptive effects, and we're particularly interested in a landscape of fear hypothesis, which suggests tagged harbour seals in Shetland may be observed hugging the coast due to predation threats. We're also interested in species-specific vulnerability and predation threat in harbour versus grey seals, and ultimately we aim to incorporate this information into impact and population consequences of disturbance assessments to protect both the predator and the prey. Before I finish, I'd like to thank the EcoPred project team, in particular my PhD supervisors, and all of our funders, sponsors and collaborators, without whom this research would not be possible. Thank you very much for listening, and I'd be happy to receive any of your questions.